Hi guys, today's video is going to be a little bit different than my last two videos. So today I am at my school greenhouse and my horticulture class has been in charge of getting plants started, and we were prepping plants to start in our community garden, and then we were planning on having a big plant sale. So there's no telling how all that will look with everything that's going on. But thankfully, we've been out of school for a couple weeks and the janitors were willing to take on the role of watering them for us every day. Typically, my horticulture students are in charge of all the daily operations in here. They check their plants, they analyze them and make sure that they aren't having any discoloration, or there's not any strange weeds growing, or there's not any bugs or anything like that. And then they also make sure that they have enough water. So in my horticulture class, I got this idea from another ag teacher. He kind of shared all of his resources with me. And what he does is he has each student in charge of a certain type of plant. And so the students do all the research on that plant. They learn how much water it needs, how much sunlight it needs, all those types of things. And then they are basically in charge of that plant until we have our plant sale. And then also they come up with the marketing side of things as well. So we figure out how much our plant plugs cost is, or how much our seed cost is, and then we figure out how much to market our plants at. So I wanted to come and check on our plants and just see how they were going. I haven't seen them in a couple weeks. And we started some plant plugs right before we got out of school for spring break, and those need a lot of attention and a lot of water, so I wanted to see how those were doing and what our success rate was on that. So I'll go ahead and kind of show you what we have going on here. We have a lot of stuff starting to bloom, so that's exciting, and I'm sure my horticulture students will be excited to see how much their plants have grown in the last couple weeks. So I'll just start out with our first bed here. This is our greenhouse, and it's not a traditional greenhouse, but it's just one that's off the side of our school building. This is my first year dealing with a greenhouse, so I'm definitely learning with my students as I go, but it's been a lot of fun, and I've learned a lot just by teaching this horticulture class, and it's been fun to see the plants grow and to see how we can make them thrive in different environments, or how we can make them grow faster by adding different things and adding different nutrients and things like that. So it's been really fun. So you can kind of see our progress here on our first bed of plants. When we left, these were probably half as tall as that. And then you can see here, we're starting to get blooms on some of our flowers here, which we didn't see before we left for break. We haven't got any of these to flower yet, but they're definitely a lot bigger and a lot more leaves on each plant. You can see some here are really a lot bigger than the others. Before we left for spring break, we added some worm castings into the soil. So we had a gentleman donate some worm castings to our horticulture department. And basically, worm castings are just a natural fertilizer that provide nitrogen to our plants. So we went ahead and sprinkled those on top of all of our plant trays, and we've just been watering them in ever since. So we were excited to see how that would affect our plants, and unfortunately, since we weren't able to get back in school, we don't have daily observations, but obviously you can tell a lot of these are thriving and doing really well. I don't see a lot of discoloration here or anything like that. Right before we left, we also started these 2 rows. So these tables here, they're filled with potting soil, and then we also added some worm castings into where we planted this. And this will be lettuce when it gets bigger. So we thought that might be kind of fun to plant lettuce here, and then we could donate it to the school for school lunch or something like that. And we just had a little bit of extra room, so that we thought that would be a good idea to kind of get something started and kind of see the process here. Over here, so these, you can see they're going to be really pretty. They're really starting to bloom. Eventually, that's what they're going to look like. These have really bloomed and got full since we left. You can kind of see that's what they really looked like before we left for break, and you can see how full and beautiful they're getting now. So here's some more of our plants. these have gotten a lot bigger. I do see some discoloration here, which typically just means that they're probably getting too much water, or maybe they're a little deficient in nitrogen, which we might need to add some more worm castings or a little bit of nitrogen mix to fix that. So you can see here, these little guys are also starting to bloom. There's just one flower on all of these so far. These ones are really healthy, they're really getting big. Eventually they're gonna look like this once they all get bloomed. And then also these are blooming as well. So once these are completely bloomed, they'll be really full in the white flowering like that. So all of these in this tray are looking really well. I'll come back to these. These are our plant plugs that we started. And then this is our last row of plants that we have. None of these have started to bloom yet, but they definitely have a lot more leaves on them. And you can see that they've grown a lot, especially that one, it's pretty tall. These guys don't look like they're doing so good. These are kind of hard to deal with, especially if they get too wet or they're lacking nitrogen, and I would assume that these ones just kind of need a little bit more care, and they need some nutrients to help get them going again. So again, when we left, these were about half that tall, so you can see in 2 weeks they've grown quite a bit. And then these have really taken off. So we have several blooms on these, and you can see they've gotten really tall with their blooms, and eventually they'll be all full and pretty like that. And we have one little bloom here, and then here again, these are the ones that are similar to the other ones that we've looked at, and just again, lots of leaves, no blooms yet or anything like that, but these ones look really healthy and they look like they are doing well. So these are our plant plugs, and before we left for spring break, we tried to plant all of these. So you can see each one of these has a little compartment. So for us, like I said, I'm still learning, but this is how we were going to try to start a lot of our vegetables. And we also tried to start a bunch more flowers as well. And so the vegetables were a lot easier to handle because obviously their seeds were a lot bigger than the flowers. And so my horticulture class and a few of my ag classes, we did all of this in one day. So it's about 1,700 plugs here, and they should have all had at least one seed in them. And you can see we haven't had great success. So I was able to come in a couple days during spring break and look at them, and they were pretty dry when I got in here. So I'm assuming what happened was that these plugs, they just got too dry when they were in the process of germination. And germination is just the process of when a seed is starting to sprout into the actual plant. And so if they do not have enough water to continue the germination process, they'll just become dormant. So it looks like that's what happened to a lot of our plants. But that's okay. We were just trying to get a head start. We are in charge of the community garden here. And so we were going to try to get a lot of our plants started in the greenhouse so they could just be transplanted directly into our garden. But it looks like we don't have... we only have about a fourth of what we actually planted, which that happens. All of this is a learning experience, and we'll just learn how to maybe better manage that next year. And we kind of had a situation where we couldn't control everything that was going on. But the stuff that did germinate and sprout in our plugs does look really good here. So you can see we had a really good success rate. Almost every single plug in that area grew their plant, and that can just vary off of plants. So plants, seeds have different germination rates and things like that, and so these might have had a faster germination rate rather than what was planted right here, and so that's why those didn't survive. So these were able to kind of get their roots started and start popping out of the soil faster, and then they were able to sustain until they could get more water. These are some of the plants that were brought in when it started getting cold, and they wanted to winter them in here, and you can see they're doing really well and blooming really pretty. Also, this is a rubber tree. So I did not know these even existed before I was here, but it actually produces a natural rubber. And we don't really have any use for it here, but it's just kind of an interesting talking point for our students. And basically, what I've read about them is that you can tap right into them, and just like when you're tapping into like a maple tree, and it produces natural rubber that can be used in industry. So I thought I was going to show you the process of transplanting from our plugs to bigger containers, but our plugs just aren't quite ready yet, and I want to make sure that they continue to grow and get a little bit stronger before I transplant them into our bigger containers. So I guess that will be a new topic on another day. So that's all I have for you today. It was just kind of showing you around our greenhouse. I know I have learned a lot just by teaching horticulture and learning with my students, so I hope you've learned something from this video. Let me know if you have any questions.